The smell of fresh coffee and pastries greeted me as I stepped into the cafe, the bell above the door jingling softly. I had a meeting scheduled with a client, but I'd arrived early, hoping to grab a quiet corner to review my notes. Scanning the room, my eyes stopped at a table near the back. There she was, my wife, Emily. She sat with her hands wrapped around a steaming cup, leaning in toward a man I didn't recognize. My stomach tightened. Her laughter rang out, light and familiar, but it wasn't meant for me. The man across from her smiled back, his hand resting casually on the table, just close enough to brush hers. I froze. It felt like someone had knocked the air out of me. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was work-related, or maybe she'd run into an old friend. But as I watched her lean closer, her lips curving into a smile I hadn't seen in months, those excuses started to crumble. The way she looked at him, relaxed, happy, intimate, wasn't how you looked at a coworker or a casual acquaintance. I should have walked up to the table right then and there, but I couldn't move. Instead, I found a seat by the window, my hands trembling as I clutched my bag. From this angle, I could see them without being noticed. The man said something, and Emily laughed again, reaching across the table to lightly touch his wrist. That touch, so brief yet so deliberate, sent a surge of anger and disbelief through me. What the hell was going on? I pulled out my phone, my fingers shaking as I opened the camera. Snapping a photo felt petty, but I needed proof, something tangible to make sense of the chaos in my head. The photo showed everything I couldn't yet say aloud. My wife, smiling at another man like he was the center of her universe. When the man stood up to grab something from the counter, I seized the opportunity. My legs moved on their own, carrying me toward Emily's table before I could think better of it. She looked up as I approached, her smile freezing in place the moment our eyes met. "James," she said, her voice a mix of surprise and something else, panic. "Hey," I said, forcing my tone to stay neutral despite the storm inside me. "Fancy seeing you here. Who's your friend?" Her face turned pale, and for a moment, she didn't answer. Emily opened her mouth, but no words came out. The man returned with 2 plates of pastries, stopping mid-step when he saw me standing there. "Who's this?" he asked, his brow furrowed as he glanced between Emily and me. "That's a great question," I said, my voice sharper now. I turned to Emily, crossing my arms. "You were about to tell me, weren't you?" Her cheeks flushed, and she stood up quickly, as if to shield him from the tension radiating off me. "James, this isn't what it looks like," she stammered. "Oh, really?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "Because it looks a lot like my wife is having coffee with another man. Care to explain?" The man set the plates down on the table, clearly uncomfortable. "I think I should go," he muttered, taking a step back. "No," I said firmly, glaring at him. "Stay. I'd love to hear your side of this." Emily shot him a desperate look, but he hesitated, his hands shoved into his pockets. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married," he said finally, avoiding my gaze. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I turned back to Emily, my voice shaking with anger. "So what? You conveniently left that part out? It's not like that," she insisted, her voice breaking. "He's just a friend, James. We were catching up, that's all." "Catching up?" I repeated, my disbelief mounting. "You don't catch up with a friend by hiding it from your husband, or by touching their wrist like that." She flinched at the accusation, her eyes filling with tears. "I didn't mean to hide it," she said softly. I didn't want you to get the wrong idea." "The wrong idea?" I said, my voice rising. "Emily, the only reason I'm here is because you didn't bother to tell me about this catching up in the first place." That's not exactly confidence inspiring. The man cleared his throat, clearly eager to escape the situation. Look, I didn't mean to cause any trouble, he said, glancing at Emily. Maybe you two should talk this out. That's a great idea, I said, stepping aside and gesturing toward the door. You're welcome to leave now. He didn't argue. Without another word, he grabbed his coat and walked out of the cafe, leaving Emily and me standing there in the awkward silence. James, she said quietly, her voice trembling, can we sit down and talk? Please? I stared at her, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to walk out, to leave her sitting there in the wreckage of her lies. But I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them by storming off. Fine, I said curtly, pulling out a chair and sitting down. Start talking. She hesitated, fiddling with the edge of her sleeve. His name is Liam, she began. We met years ago, before I even knew you. He was someone I used to care about. A lot. And now? I asked, my voice cold. She bit her lip, avoiding my gaze. He reached out a few weeks ago, said he was going through a rough time and wanted to catch up. I didn't think it was a big deal. Not a big deal? I said, my anger flaring again. Emily, you lied to me about where you were going. You've been meeting up with your ex behind my back, and you think that's not a big deal? Her tears started to fall, and she reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I pulled away. I didn't want to hurt you, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought if I told you, you'd think I was doing something wrong. I let out a bitter laugh. Well, congratulations. You managed to make it look about as bad as it could possibly get. Emily sat across from me, tears streaming down her face, but I felt no sympathy. I folded my arms and leaned back, waiting for her to explain herself. James, she started again, her voice barely audible. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. Liam reached out, and I didn't know how to say no. He was important to me once, and I felt like I owed him a conversation. Just a conversation? I asked, my tone laced with disbelief. Because from where I was standing, it didn't look like just a conversation. Her shoulders slumped, and she buried her face in her hands. I know how it looked, she said, but I swear nothing happened. She paused, her words catching in her throat. You just what? I demanded, my voice rising. Wanted to relive old memories? See if there was still a spark? What, Emily? What were you looking for? She flinched at my words, her fingers twisting in her lap. I don't know, she admitted, her voice cracking. Things have felt different between us lately. You've been so busy, and I guess I felt invisible. Liam reminded me of a time when I didn't feel like that. Her confession hit me like a ton of bricks. So, because I've been working hard to provide for us, you decided to go looking for validation from someone else? That's not what I was doing, she said quickly, shaking her head. I wasn't looking for anything, James. I made a mistake, okay? A stupid, thoughtless mistake. Thoughtless? I snapped. Emily, you lied to me. You met with him behind my back, more than once, and now you're sitting here acting like it's nothing. Do you even hear yourself? Her tears came harder, and she reached across the table again, her hands trembling. This time, I didn't pull away. James, she said, her voice desperate. I love you. I never stopped loving you. I don't want to lose what we have. Please, tell me what I can do to fix this. I stared at her, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me. Part of me wanted to believe her, to hold on to the life we'd built together. But another part, the part that had watched her laugh with Liam as if I didn't exist, wasn't sure if I could. You want to fix this? I said after a long silence. Then here's what you're going to do. You're going to cut him out of your life completely. No more calls, no more texts, no more meetings. And you're going to be honest with me about everything from now on. No more lies. She nodded quickly, her eyes wide with hope. I'll do it, she said. I'll block him tonight. I'll do whatever it takes, James. I swear. The days that followed were tense. True to her word, Emily showed me as she blocked Liam's number and deleted their messages. She apologized constantly, her guilt and regret written all over her face. But trust isn't something you can rebuild overnight. Every time she left the house, every time her phone buzzed, I felt that gnawing doubt creep in. Was she really telling the truth now, or was she just getting better at hiding it? One evening, as we sat together in silence, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. James, she said softly, do you think we'll ever be okay again? I didn't answer right away. The truth was, I didn't know. I want to try, I said finally, but it's going to take time. A lot of time. And you need to understand that things won't go back to the way they were. Not for a while. She nodded, her expression solemn. I'll do whatever it takes, she whispered. Months later, we were still trying to navigate the fallout. Some days were better than others, but the scars of her actions lingered. I'd like to say we lived happily ever after, but the reality was messier, more uncertain. All I knew was that trust, once broken, was the hardest thing to rebuild. And sometimes it never fully heals.